Let's move on to the next question. So you'll have heard the term summer solstice and winter solstice. That's what I just explained. What do these terms mean? So like I just explained, that's when the tilt of the earth is exactly towards or exactly away from the sun. And so that corresponds to the longest and the shortest day of the year, option A. Now interestingly, these are not the hottest or the coldest days of the year because there are a lot more factors on which the temperature of a place depends. It depends on the ocean currents, it depends on how long summer has been going on, and so on. And so you'll notice that these are not necessarily the hottest or the coldest days, but they are the days where you receive the most sunshine or the least sunshine. Let's move on to the next one. So question 7. What is a supernova? A song by Oasis. I'm not sure. The only song by Oasis I know is Wonderwall. Let's check. Oasis Supernova. Oh, it is indeed a song by Oasis. It's Champagne Supernova though. So that's not the answer. So like I told you, the way stars shine is by fusing hydrogen nuclei in their cores. But what happens when the hydrogen nuclei are depleted is the helium nuclei start fusing. And for the more massive stars, more and more massive nuclei are able to fuse at the center, all the way up to iron. Now what happens at iron is when you start trying to fuse iron, instead of getting energy from the fusion process, you have to actually give energy for the process to occur. And so the entire star that is supported by the radiation pressure coming from the core suddenly stops receiving this radiation pressure and collapses onto itself. Now because of this collapse, all of the gas layers collide at the center and they explode outwards in something called a supernova. So yes, in simple terms, a supernova is option C, an explosion in space. Let's check out the next one. So a solar system is heliocentric. What does this mean? Okay, so this is an interesting chapter in the history and philosophy of science. So somewhere in the 16th century, there was the age of enlightenment in Europe. Before that time, everyone in the Western world used to believe that the sun and the planets go around the earth and not the other way around. But that also meant that there were all these complicated explanations for why planets move in retrograde motion, and there were all these epicycles and so on. And so this astronomer Nicholas Copernicus came along and explained the motion of every celestial body in very simple terms if we just assume that instead of the earth, the sun is the center of the universe. This model where the sun is at the center is called the heliocentric model. The sun at the center, and the rest, as they say, is history. Quite literally. So the answer here is option C. The planets revolve around the sun. Let's move on to the next question. What is Olympus Mons? Okay, so this is another GK question. So when you look at mountains on Earth, no matter what happens, these mountains can never grow beyond somewhere around 10 kilometers. So that's because as a mountain grows, the pressure at the bottom of the mountain also increases. After the height of the mountain reaches about 10 kilometers on Earth, the pressure at the base is so great that the rocks basically crumble over there. But on Mars, the gravity is much lower, so the mountains can grow much larger. And so Olympus Mons is actually a volcano on Mars that is about 2.5 times the height of Everest. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? So the answer is A, a volcano on Mars. The next question. What are Saturn's rings made of? So this is a tough one. Okay. So it's definitely not made of helium because helium doesn't really bond very well with each other in natural circumstances. So it really cannot form these chunks that we know exist in Saturn's rings. Dust particles is plausible, but again, dust particles are extremely small in size, so I highly doubt it's dust particles. So I know that there's this misconception that water is only found on Earth, but that's really not true. For example, there's this famous moon of Saturn called Enceladus, which basically shoots out volcanoes of ice. But yeah, I don't really know the answer to this one, but I'm pretty sure it has to be ice out of the given options. Let's just check what it is. So option C is correct. Technically, Saturn's rings are made up of dust, rock and ice, but mostly ice. Well, the more you know. So let's see what's next. When will we see Halleys Comet? Okay, so for those of you who don't know what a comet is, it's basically a clump of ice and dust that goes around the solar system. And sometimes it comes very close to the sun, so the ice starts melting and it forms a very beautiful tail. And Halleys Comet is one such object. It's probably the most famous comet today. So I remember that the Halleys Comet comes close to the sun once in every 76 years or so. And I also know that as a kid I was extremely excited and wanted to see it. But it had come close to the sun only a decade before I was born. So I remember thinking to myself that I'll be very old by the time I'll see Halleys Comet for the first time. And so given that personal tidbit, the answer has to be B, 2061. Once in a blue moon is a common phrase. What is a blue moon? Okay, so this is more of an astrology question, but so in a calendar month there are 31 days, but the amount of time it takes the moon to orbit the earth is about 27 days. But when you account for the fact that earth is also moving around the sun, there's an additional 2 days to cover up for the lag, and so the phases of the moon have a period of somewhere around 29 days. Now 29 is less than 30, so sometimes what happens is you get 2 full moons in the same calendar month. So the second blue moon in such cases is called a blue moon. It's just a random fact, has nothing much to do with astronomy, but the answer is option A, a moon that is twice full in one calendar month. Okay, let's go to the next one. Where do planets get their names? Characters from Shakespeare. Okay, so the planets got their names, I think, thousands of years back. I mean, at least the 5 planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, those 5 got their names way back in the BC, so Shakespeare wasn't even born back then. And I'm pretty sure I don't know of any famous astronomers from that time as well, so it has to be Greek or Roman gods. For example, Venus is the god of beauty.